All right, welcome to Section 8 Consulting. Today we're going to be talking about some of the fundamentals of applying for Section 8 housing. Before we get started, I'm going to do a few introductions. As you can see on the screen live, this is our website. I've been a consultant for about 21 years. I've served about 15,000 clients. When I say served, I mean that they hired our company as a consultant to kind of help them get through the confusing process, and then hopefully at some point be able to get a voucher a lot quicker than 15 years. In many cases, probably in a few months, depending on where you are. Also, I think we've had a service level around 7,000 to 8,000 vouchers. That means clients got them with a success rate around 91%. That all being said, we posted details down there. If you're tired of tossing and turning at night, worrying, trying to figure it out, then this might be a solution to work with a consultant. It doesn't have to be me. It could be anybody that does this. All right, so we have a live example. I'm going to use Massachusetts and their application. We're going to talk about the real fundamentals because I get asked this a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and move my face out the way so we can take a look at this application. Let's keep in mind that every county and state, every state and all the counties may have different types of applications, but they all have some fundamental things that are going to be the same. So most of you think when you fill out an application that is the end of the situation, you're filling it out, and then they'll call you when they're ready. That is not true. There is a pre-application. That is kind of a process to eliminate. It's based in principle more about who you are, where you live, how much money you make, possibly how old you are, and whether or not you have a disability. Now, a lot of you think that being disabled and a senior and living in town is sufficient to move you to the top of the list. It is not. Simply because virtually everybody that applies for this or a voucher, and there are many types, that alone would be sufficient. So let's go through the application. So it asks for the standard information here, Social Security name and blah, blah, blah. What they're establishing there is not only a record of you, but whether or not you actually live locally. Look, part of the hustle of getting vouchers and applying is you don't necessarily often have to live in the specific county where you're applying. It allows, there's a lot of ways in which you could port the voucher. You could get it from Florida, port it back to where you are. So it's sometimes learning how to get through that system. So anyways, talk about demographics. You'll notice here they're going to identify, just as I had mentioned, they're trying to determine whether or not you're a senior and disabled to give you some of the first of many preferences they'll be discussing. And also your residency, whether or not you work or live in the area, and then they'll probably move on to see whether or not they can segregate you in separate programs, like here, do we have a veteran, which would move you in more to the HUD-VASH programs. Then this application is a bit exceptional because I see a lot of preferences already being asked. Are you homeless? Things like are you homeless, are you a domestic violence victim, and are you disabled are some of the top factors that could set you apart. Now, in some way or form, most people do have those qualifications, but the more of them you have has a very serious impact, okay? And when you consider stacking all of those together, the more you have, the better you do. Beyond that, they ask for some very general information below that. They will ask about your ethnicity. That does not count for a single point, what color you are, and stuff like that, okay? And then you make a certification of your answers, and you're done with pre-application. Now I call the pre-application the elimination application because around 90% of all people that apply are simply going to have too outlandish preferences. In other words, their only functional problem is they just turned 18 and they believe they're entitled to a voucher because they have a really bad job at McDonald's. That is not a sufficient cause to get a voucher, okay? So this kind of helps determine whether or not you would make it through the first round. Primary applications is where they're going to establish some of these preferences. Are you 62? Are you a senior? Are you over 62? Are you disabled? Are you a veteran? Are you homeless? And the many other factors. Now, one of the plausible things you should consider with your pre-applications is once you get past that, if you get past that round and they contact you back and you do have the right set of answers and you are considered a priority for special use voucher or so on, that if they contact you again to verify that information, you're really close to getting that voucher. Now, one thing I'm going to talk about these fundamentals is this. You're putting one egg in one basket meaning you go and you apply at only one housing authority. You have not even established whether or not they're open or closed, whether the light bulbs are on or off. Number two, you've not established whether or not they even have a voucher to give. Are they only giving away vouchers? Are they only giving out vouchers to seniors or disabled? And so those are the things that my company does determine through open public or federal requests to kind of see, because every month the housing authority is open and may have an opportunity to have people apply. Just because they take everybody that ever lived in that county and allows them to apply does not mean that most people they're going to consider. It just means they legally have to do so. So that particular month and the funding they get that month may be in reserve for a very specific category of preference. In other words, their target that month with their funding may just be for homeless, it could be for seniors, it could be for a combination. Knowing these factors and multiplying them across multiple counties. So you would ask yourself, well, Jay, why the hell would I would apply for housing authorities that are 100 miles away or even several states away? Well, it's simple. It does not matter where you get the voucher. It does not mean you need to move to all these other states either. It just means that if you're skillful enough, like a consultant is, then you're able to pick these up somewhere else, and then you could potentially initiate portability right back to where you want it. So if you can't get it in your own town with a long line and a long wait, then grabbing it somewhere else and kind of bending the rules a little bit legally to port that back would be a much faster solution than you sitting around and waiting for the state of Massachusetts in a 99-year wait. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that Massachusetts has a problem. I'm giving you an extreme example. So this is one of the many factors outside of just simply pulling an ink pen out of your purse or out of your pocket and walking in and thinking that, okay, well, as long as I fill out the application and I give good, honest Christian answers, that they're really going to consider me, that I'm disabled and I'm old, and that's going to put in the top of the list. Look, everybody, as I mentioned before, is disabled and old. That you're not going to distinguish anything other than the factor that you're like 99% of the other people that are on the list. As a consultant, I'm using about another 50 points of data on you to figure out which housing authority. So if we know you need to be blue from Mars, yeah, you need to be 99, legally blind, then all those things we work towards making sure that happens before you apply for the application. Again, that's an extreme example. So if we know that there's a cornfield, a county with just a cornfield and 10 houses, and they've got a desk full of vouchers versus the metropolitan area of, let's say, Las Vegas. Vegas is a 15-year wait, but Little Bob County is a 3-month wait because nobody wants it. Portability sometimes is the answer. So there are many tactics that could be deployed. Now, is it fair or reasonable? Maybe it's questionable morally or ethically, but then again, how do you, when you're applying for all these places, I think the real question is, how do you play a rigged game and win?